What's going on, everybody? Welcome back to the UP. Today we have another long-form podcast version of the show. Our guest is someone, actually, way back with the AM podcast, we were supposed to meet. I was very, let's say, opinionated about what was going on early on, and that's kind of why I started the podcast, and I started reaching out to Facebook groups and things like that, and I got involved with unmasking children and being for putting them back in school. And I'm like, who's ready to talk about this on the AM podcast? And almost everyone said no. And Kim, you were recommended by someone in one of those groups, and that's how we connected, and we texted, and we were just never able to really make it work. But now that we are more official, we got Alex, master behind the keys. Hit that shot, Alex.
What's up, everybody?
And then, the UP show is live, and we are, what episode is this? This is episode 7. Anyways, can you take a second, introduce yourself, talk about your business and the different certifications and things that you have?
Sure. So my name is Kim Wilson. I am a marriage and family therapist, but I'm also a certified play therapist. There's a little over 150 play therapists in the state of Illinois. It's an extra year of certification. I have 3 boys, 18, 15, and 10, so they're an adventure as well. My practice is in Crystal Lake, right by the Mariano's, CVS, Walgreens triangle there. We see everybody from all ages and all different, struggles. So I did that.
So how did you get into that, and what made you want to do it?
I've always had a passion for psychology.
It's like pretty recent, right?
Yeah.
Like starting your own thing?
It was. I was a mom for 12 years, called a plot twist in 2017, and had filed for divorce after, I don't know how many years of marriage, a lot. So knew I needed to do something that was going to be next level and find my passion. And so I sat with it for about 10 months and got my kids to a really great place mentally, emotionally, and everything, and said, now what am I going to do for me? This one's going to kindergarten. This one, now what? And
this was in 2017?
This was in 2017, yeah.
Okay.
And so I just started looking at going back to get my master's and then what that entailed. I looked at a number of schools and just settled on Capella University. It was a flex path, so I could do it from home. And just had a really great experience with it. Took my time. I have also a certificate in contemporary marriage and family theory as well. So it's kind of did that for a year. Then that went into the master's program. Then when I did my internship.
So you have to get your master's to
be a therapist. Yeah.
To be a therapist. Okay.
Yeah.
So you got your master's, and then you said you have to do an internship as well?
So we have to do an internship as well. And during the internship, there's a couple phases. There's where you go and it's a week long. That was actually about 2 weeks before the shutdown. And then the second internship ended up being remote because we were in the thick of COVID. It was June. So during that time, I started to see some changes in my own children's mental health because we were remote. And the play therapy opportunity really fell in my lap. Well, it wasn't doing anything else really except going to school and working a little bit. But so I went and did that as well so I could help these kids because I knew long term if my own children were struggling and I was home with them and I had the tools to help them, what was this going to become later on and during the years?
Right. And what sort of things were you seeing with your kids where you were like, okay, this...
Where this was.
So you saw it with your kids first, and then you were like, okay, I need to help other kids.
Yes.
Okay.
So my 10-year-old had an IEP, mainly for speech, and getting on those speech. First, he wasn't getting his minutes.
What can you tell everyone what an IEP is?
Oh, an individual education plan. So he was having some issues with speech. He had been given that at age 4, and then it carried through, and he was in kindergarten at the time of the shutdown. And his IEP minutes were not being met. So there's so many minutes they have to be given based off the level of the task they need or whatever the treatment is they need. So
typically you see an IEP with like a kid on the spectrum or things
Correct.
like that. Your kid is not.
No, he's not.
Okay.
His was actually it's because he was this part of his mouth is there, so he would say things like twuck instead of truck, those kind of things.
That's so cute though.
It's so cute unless you're in 4th and 5th grade.
Yeah.
So getting him on remote speech with other kids, with dogs barking, and the teacher gets frustrated. It was just a mess. And
So this was remote IEP.
IEP speech. Yeah. Now there's also kids that get
That sounds
remote
horrible.
IEP occupational therapy or physical therapy or ABA therapy.
And this was because of COVID.
This is
Everything
because
was
of
remote.
COVID. This is all during the lockdown.
Okay.
So my 10-year-old had developed first he developed nightmares. And then nightmares. And then he was having just horrible meltdowns because it was just so overstimulating. Kids are crying on, remote. There's dogs, there's cats, there's and he would be on there and he's not learning, but he's supposed to do this math. And then it was not good. And then he developed sleepwalking because of his brain being just so overstimulated. And that really does affect that developing brain at that point. My middle son...
Do you say the sleepwalking's affecting the brain?
Yeah, because his brain wasn't shutting down because of the overstimulation from...
Well, sleep is one of the most important things.
100%.
It's when your muscles repair. It's when your body repairs. It's that REM sleep. Everybody needs that. That's how you get that true rest. It's like if you don't get a deep sleep, you feel it the next day.
Well, and if you look at the studies, the American Academy of Pediatrics says there's no more than 2 hours of, electronics is not recommended. In fact, I just did the physical form for my 18-year-old, and it says the same thing. Does it get more than 2 hours of electronics? And I said, but all their classes are now. So do the classes not affect that number? Like, does that count? And even as pediatricians, so like, don't start.
it's saying, just in general, should not get more than 2 hours of screen time.
Yes, that's what science. That's the science.
And that's, you don't need to cite the study, but there is a study out there supporting
100%,
that.
100%. And pediatricians are asking that in their wellness checklists.
Are you familiar with this study? Can I ask you questions about?
I don't know much of. I don't know. I can't quote who did it, but I have looked it up numerous times, and I even presented my own pediatrician with it at one point, where I'm like, "Can you make this make sense?" And he's very aware where I was going.
So
with
how
it.
did they in the study? How did they come to the conclusion of 2 hours?
It has to do with the brain and how that developing brain doesn't shut down because it becomes overstimulating, be it what they're watching on the screen or all of that. So when we went remote, the kids were becoming overstimulated. They're on 6 hours of remote time. They weren't necessarily getting breaks. I guess I should say every 20 minutes someone was up and in my kitchen getting a snack. But, then we're having not just learning on remote, we're having all that external, kids crying or dogs or cats are jumping up. If a teacher's trying to teach math and the kids are watching someone's dog, they're not paying any attention. So it just became this. My middle one had an anxiety tick form where I would talk to him and he would, and I noticed he didn't have it on the weekends. And there was just a lot of stuff. One point, my kid had to do gym in his bedroom. They asked him to get a soccer ball. And my house is not huge, so I was like, this is not happening.
Well, that was a huge problem that I was hearing was you're at the whim of everyone's own personal situation, right? So if you got a small house and it's 5-6 kids, you are screwed.
Yeah.
Because the stimulation in the camera, there's not a private area. Because I can argue for remote learning if and only if everyone has the same parameters. You need a set room, a solid background, no extra noise, your own solid, private confinement area. But that's very hard with a lot of these families with multiple kids.
Well, and what was happening is the kids were then learning in their bedrooms. And your brain's like, this is where I sleep. Mm-hmm. So then are they really focused? And I have a 4-bedroom home. And again, I was getting my master's, so some of my stuff was online as well. So I was remote learning.
Did it affect your learning too?
Oh, yeah. Because I was having to stop to help my kids. And then, I have my 6th grader doing this, and then I had my son. So a freshman. He was 8th grade, and then he went into freshman. So when they went to 2020, the fall of 2020, my oldest started as a freshman in a new school. My middle started as a 6th grader in a new school. And my 1st grader started in a new school as well because we had moved.
Oh my God.
So
this is a nightmare.
It was rough going. It was really rough going. Thankfully, they were in classes where they were remote and they at least knew friends. My little one did not. He started fresh, and then he had a first-year teacher who did a phenomenal job. But it was hard. It was hard.
Who got the worst? Would you say out of the 3 kids? Because you got pretty different age ranges. So
I would say my 10-year-old because he's
the
not.
middle.
No, he's
that's
the youngest.
The youngest. Okay.
So he was in 1st grade. Really didn't at that age. Don't really have friends yet unless you're in the school environment. Well, his kindergarten, he was sent home in March. And then we had moved from one end of town to the other. So he didn't know anyone in his classroom. And then, all the sports had ended. So outside of maybe a few kids that were my friends' kids, he didn't have that social aspect.
That's kind of a huge part of
It's a huge part.
Being that age.
It was awful. Yeah.
And what grade was he when it started?
So he was in kindergarten.
In kindergarten.
And then he started 1st grade.
Was it almost 2 years of remote stuff? Or was it just the 1 year?
Well, they went home.
I can't remember.
March 13th of 2020. That was full remote. Then they started remote in the fall of 20. And then they went back for a little bit around Halloween, hybrid. And I can't remember what it was because the high school and the junior high and the elementary schools were all different. So that made it fun as well. So one kid went Monday, one kid went half a day Thursday, one kid And it was just strictly in front of the computer. No, when they went back into the schools, they went hybrid. I think.
Oh, that's right. That's right.
Yeah, I can't remember what it was. District 155, the high school maybe went. Half the classes went Monday, Tuesday, and then they were remote the other days. And then
And this was when they had all those really strict rules.
Right, masked.
And you had to walk a certain way down the hall. You had to keep your distance. Right. They spread out the desks.
Right. You had to be 6 feet apart.
6 feet apart. You had to only certain number of people could be in the bathroom.
Correct.
I can't really remember.
You couldn't play with balls at recess.
Couldn't play with balls.
Couldn't play on the playground equipment.
Because it's outside.
Because it's outside. In a mask. They were masked. Right.
Oh, yeah, they had to be masked outside.
Correct.
And we know now, days ago, right? I mean, Alex probably know. They just announced, the CDC just announced to treat COVID like the flu.
Imagine that.
After 4 years.
Right.
It's been 4 years of people let's just say being really mean to the ones who were saying, hey, it's just the flu. Hey, it's just the flu. Hey, it's just the flu. You actually got banned on social media. You got kicked out. You got fired if you didn't get the vaccine. And now, 4 years later, oh, it's just the flu. Treat it like the flu.
So it's interesting you talk about being really mean. And I don't know if you're aware of what happened when the kids got unmasked. So in full disclosure, I was a plaintiff in the lawsuit. I was approached. My partner at my practice was a plaintiff as well.
This is with Tom DeVore, right?
Yes. So I was a plaintiff.
Shout out, Tom. You are a warrior and a patriot, my friend.
I was like, sign my name.
Yeah. I think I signed something. I know I helped raise money for it.
Yeah.
I posted someone asked me, they came in, they're like, Steve, use your following, please help us. And then we raised it in like 10 minutes. It was awesome.
We had to do it quick.
Yeah.
So I signed my name. And I'm very good friends with the other people that signed their names as well. And so when the, verdict came down on Friday, it came back that only the kids that were listed in the lawsuit were going to get unmasked. So
because COVID is very biased to people in the lawsuit.
It's funny you say.
It's just so ridiculous. So
at one point prior to the verdict of the lawsuit, my oldest was wrestling at Central in a mask and got COVID in a mask at Central, not wrestling because he had a torn meniscus.
It hurts to listen to that. Like, it hurts.
He started wrestling in November at Crystal Lake Central. When my middle one started wrestling in the end of December at Bernotis, which is maybe a mile apart, he had to do weekly COVID testing in order to wrestle. But at Central, they were okay with not doing COVID testing, but somehow at Bernotis, a mile away.
Who's making those decisions?
Because
that's not same district.
No, it's not the same district. So it was
high
the two
school
different boards, right?
It was so arbitrary, and nobody had any questions.
No, they just went along with it.
Oh yeah,
I didn't.
I'll follow these rules when I'm in this part of town, and then this part of town I'll follow these rules. And if I'm following the rules, I'm being safe.
Right.
Makes no sense.
So if we go back to that lawsuit, when the verdict came out, 2 of my kids were in District 47 at the time. They were unmasked. But my kid that was in District 155, lived in the same house, right, would have to have gone to school masked because it's COVID. Right. So as it turned out, the districts ended up unmasking all the kids and made mask optional by Monday, which was good.
And do you remember what date this was?
It was the first weekend of February. I want to say it was like February 4th or 5th.
So 2021. 2020. Oh my God.
Right.
Okay.
Right.
I'm horrible with dates.
Yeah. Nope. So with that being said, we in this group, and we'll get to that in a second, said, when your child goes to school unmasked, please have this conversation. And it was, be respectful. People want to wear masks. That's their decision. You are not to have an opinion about what someone else wears with their mask. You're just about to go on your day. So we thought we set our children up for success. We sent our children to the wolves and had no idea what was about to come.
Well, the ones who didn't wear the mask were the ones who got viciously bullied and made fun of.
And put in back of classrooms in February with windows open and fans blowing on them.
Wait, what?
Yeah.
They were shoved in the back
of a classroom
with fans blowing out the window.
With fans blowing on them with the windows open in classrooms. And this happened in multiple schools.
Did you hear about this, Alex?
So
you knew about this? I did not know about that.
I have heard some stuff. Kaylin was in school, and this is a funny one, she had a teacher, it was a substitute, and it was after everyone wasn't wearing a mask. And the sub told the whole class, if you want to come up to me and talk to me at my desk, you have to put on a mask. And they were like, teacher.
What school?
That, Hannah Beardsley.
Oh, okay. Well,
they're like,
I know who that teacher is.
We don't have masks with us. Mm-hmm. And they get a whole lecture about like, well, you should because it's the right thing to do and it's safe.
There were so
like, we don't have masks.
Yeah.
What do you want us to do?
There were so many secret videos. I love these. The kids would videotape the teachers. They would do this weird thing where they would be like, it's fine if, it's your choice, but also you're dirty. Like that's how it was presented with these teachers and how disrespectful it was and putting others in danger.
Well, and what was interesting, a lot of these teachers that were treating the kids like this had spent much of COVID traveling to other parts of the country.
There was a bunch of local teachers that did that.
So
they went to Florida.
Yes. And then when they came back, they lobbied for the schools to remain closed to stop the spread. And they lost me before that, but that's about when they lost me, when I was like, okay.
And it wasn't just like 1 or 2 teachers.
There were board members that were doing it. Mm-hmm.
It is so frustrating.
Right. So down the rabbit hole I went.
So real quick, can we talk about the effects of, because I kind of want to get into to the group that sort of brought us together. The group, it was like a Facebook group called Unmask the Children, correct?
Yes.
So can you talk about the effects of wearing a mask and what it does to a child and how it can really like affect them and their learning?
So one, we learn by social cues, and I know even with my own son, who's you may have seen some of his videos. He's pretty vibrant. My 10-year-old. He's a funny kid. Using him as an example, he stopped talking, not just because of the speech, but not even it more because of the he had the mask, and because of the speech and the mask, no one could understand him. So they took away his voice and who he was. And I saw such a change in his personality of not participating in class and just not having the confidence that this little guy has. And,
Well, even when there's no mask, because I train athletes, I train young kids,
Right.
even when there's no mask, and I'm like, I don't hear them. And I say, what'd you say? You can see an immediate, like, cower,
Right.
like, oh God, I got to say it again.
Right.
I can't even imagine what it's like adding that extra barrier.
right.
So, yeah, I mean, I definitely saw a decline in social skills.
So what I'm seeing now, and I'll speak to it more from a play therapist aspect, because the kids that are kindergarten, K through 3 right now, are kids that were not in school during COVID, and then 4th and up were the 4th graders. Now we're kindergartners. Okay, so when we look at now, is that the kids that were in schools and masked lack the ability to understand social cues a lot. But there's an innate fear, because we told these kids, not me, but others, that you could be asymptomatic. So you had to stay 6 feet apart from your friends. So these kids were going out, and they're going out on the playground, and they're being kids, and they're running because there's no balls, there's nothing, so they're running, and they trip and fall, and they fall into Matthew. Now, the next day, Matthew's not at school. Matthew's not at school because Matthew's brothers tested positive for COVID. So Matthew has to stay home 14 days. But Matthew never tests positive for COVID, so his quarantine time starts when his brother's ends. So Matthew didn't go to school for 28 days in April of 2021. But we can't tell.
And there was a remote option for them.
It was a packet of information. There was a remote option, but it was everyone in the district at all grades that were quarantined at the time. So it was, here's a packet of paperwork, and then here's the time someone's available. And at times you could sign on and there's 50 kids for one. So they did not tell the kids Matthew was not sick or Matthew wasn't home or was home, right? So these kids, as it turns out, would sit and think, oh my God, what if I gave my friend Matthew COVID because I bumped into him because I broke the 6 feet barrier and he died? So they would wait a month. And now, mind you, that age doesn't have social media, or at least they shouldn't. So,
They all do now.
Right. So, I mean, I was getting texts and they're like, my son is really upset. Is Matthew okay? I'm like, yeah, he's fine. It's 28 days. Like, these kids, so that goes into that subconscious brain. So these kids are like, what did I do to my friend? What if I killed my friend? So then I have the same thing happening when I see kids of first responders. They're heroes. They did a great job. But we told them they're going to come home and kill their families. So guess what their kids did? They buried themselves into things that they could control. And they were worried that their parents were going to come home. And then they go to work one day and they die of COVID because asymptomatic. So these kids are struggling mentally because they're constantly worried about their parents. And that is what I'm seeing in this, like, little kids with anxiety and fear and separation anxiety.
Are you seeing a lot of germaphobes? I always thought that this was going to create millions of
No,
germaphobes.
I'm not really seeing a lot of OCD or germophobics.
Okay.
No, not so much that.
I always thought just because, the masking and don't touch this and wash your hands and we're overdoing that.
Yeah.
And I thought that was going to affect the way. But I guess everyone kind of got over that together at the same time.
Yeah.
Like we stopped putting alcohol over our hands and we stopped using the Germ-X. And
killing
things
our
like
immune
that.
systems.
Killing the immune system.
Right.
Can you actually speak on that a little bit? Do you have any sort of research or anything on the immune system and what the mask done? Okay. Well,
I mean, my own research, but
yeah, I'm
not a
the
doctor.
same way,
not,
right? Yeah.
You know.
Yeah, I'm a big idiot. I don't know what I'm talking about, but I know that the immune system, it needs
Right.
germs.
Right.
It needs, you
100%.
need to touch things and you need to let viruses enter your body because that's what builds your immune system. And we completely destroyed that. And I do think we are seeing signs of that now. Like we know that taking the COVID vaccine too much, it actually makes you more likely to get COVID. We saw some recent studies on that, which is completely backwards from what we were told. Completely backwards.
Yep.
So let's talk about this group and sort of what the group did. Well, we did start speaking on it, right? So let's go back to this lawsuit. Lawsuit is what you would call it. And the results of it led to half the kids being unmasked, the other half still having the option.
It became optional.
Okay.
Is what it really became.
So it became optional for everyone kind of at the same time that this lawsuit?
Yes.
Okay. And this was 2022.
Yes. It was the first week of February.
The first
weekend in February. I can look up the exact date, but it was like February 4th or 5th. I only know because we have this major tournament that weekend, and I was standing with one of the teachers that was in the teacher lawsuit, and they played the national anthem, and we were sobbing under the American flag. And so I know it sounds crazy, and people were like, what? And we're just like, this is why we did this, you know, this was so important to us, is it just, and our children. So that's the only reason why I know it was only 2 years ago. We just, so much pride in being like, we did this for this. This is why we had to do it.
Did you see like immediate results when the mask came off with your kids? Because I know we talk about your kids a lot.
Yeah. So what was interesting is that we had gone, my kids all wrestle and they do youth wrestling. At that point, I had 2 kids in youth wrestling and 1 in high school. And so we were going to these tournaments throughout the Chicagoland area. And, you're supposed to have a mask. There was no masks. People weren't wearing them. Or they were wearing them around their chin. And, someone would say, put it on. And you're like, okay, One
of my favorite things to tell everyone is I do jujitsu. I've been doing jujitsu for a few years. Every jujitsu gym should be dead. Because nobody ever at any time during the beginning, they never shut down, ever. I'm pretty sure every single gym stayed open.
Mm-hmm. As it should have.
As it should have, exactly.
I mean, we laugh. Now, I laughed then, to be honest with you, but my kid's out there playing football in a mask, and then there's someone at the door, at the gym door, locker room door, won't let them in without a mask. They couldn't use their lockers because of COVID. Like, there were so many things where I'm like, you can't use your locker? Why
I'm trying to think of how to word this. From a psychology perspective, why did everyone ignore common sense?
Fear of the unknown. Fear of the unknown. And that's what anxiety is just fear of the unknown.
And that was propagated through our TVs and our
100%.
Streams and our media.
100%. And I think some of it was valid. And I know I already shared with you is I have a child that was born with a blood disease. Thank God he's outgrown it. But he tends to run a lower immune system. So in the beginning, I did not let my children out. I wore the mask. I did not follow the lines on the grocery store because that made no sense to me. I'm like, I spent 2 hours following your lines. I could be out of here in less time if I just do what I need to do. And I don't want to talk to anybody anyway.
I only wore the mask when I was with my wife.
So I did the mask for a little bit. And then, at first, and then I even wiped down some of the groceries and then I was like, okay, this makes zero sense to me. So what happened was when I was in grad school, I had access to medical journals. So people were throwing out like SARS-2 and stuff. So I started looking them up. And then I'd find these journals that are like 48 pages with this, virus. And so I'm starting to read some of this. So then I would say to a friend, hey, I read this article or this journal article or this science. I want you to read it. And I'd go to Google because you can't forward it from, their system to a friend. And all of a sudden I look on Google and it's 26 pages. Well, what happened to the rest of it? So I would start looking. And then as the COVID got a little bit more, like in March, there'd be like 198 articles. I'm just throwing out numbers. Then by June, I'm like, maybe this doesn't make sense. So let me go back and find it. Now there's 95 articles. Where'd all the science
This is
go?
on Google.
No, this is on like medical journals and the university website that you would have to be a student or professor to access.
Slowly just taking them away.
Slowly just taking them away. So then when you looked at Google and you're looking at these articles that are like 22 pages and it's got, data and it's the science and stuff, because I went down that rabbit hole. I'm like, well, you're going to tell me you trust the science. I'm going to go find science. And science doesn't exist on Google or DuckDuckGo or anything. Science exists here. And so then I would look on Google and I'm like, you're missing 10 of the pages. You're missing the part where it says this, and this.
Specifically, where were you looking for these articles?
So when I was in grad school, it would be like on American Academy of Pediatrics or this, all these different journals, Mayo Clinic, all these different sites that would have doctors or, doing these, scientific studies where they've tested a vaccine or they've tested, what is the long-term effects of this, all of these things.
Okay. Yeah, because I always think I want to see the articles. And where's the best way for like someone like me if I wanted to go find articles?
Well, good luck with that now.
Why do you say that? Just because
it's all going to be
it's just so hard to get to?
Yeah.
Of course. So what are some of the things that you are currently dealing with at your clinic? But what are some of the most prevalent things that you deal with when it comes to like kids and therapy?
So I think it depends on the age. A couple things that we did is when they sent everybody home, we eliminated mandated reporters. So not all kids went home to ideal homes. We had kids who went home to homes that didn't have food. We had kids that went home to parents that were not ideal, i.e. abusive, or an addict. And there was a lot of things that children would maybe not normally see, but because they're home all the time, they did see. So I'm seeing a lot of that and some of the, after effects of some of that, whether it's being anxiety or behavior issues, because they're acting out because they don't have a voice or things like that. So when I look at play therapy, I'm seeing a lot of that. And getting kids to understand how their brain works. And they're not part of a system, they're being an individual.
Can you describe play therapy? We've mentioned play therapy. A couple times. Can you describe what that is?
With play therapy, kids don't have the ability to like express their feelings. They can't sit and have a conversation like this. Yeah, they can say, I'm sad. Why are you sad? Oh, because this. But and a lot of times kids are coached by parents. So when we look at play therapy, we do things that
coached how?
Don't tell them this. Don't say this. You have to protect mommy. If you say this, then the police will come and take you. Like those kind of things. So when we look at play therapy, it allows us to kind of get into that subconscious brain. One of the things I use a lot is a sand tray. I have a portable sand tray, and I have a bunch of different characters and people and things that go in the sand tray. And I always say, show me your family. And so they find the characters, let's just say, to show me the family. So an example would be one little guy took my little hill and he put himself on top of it. And he chose himself as Batman. Now, I can't say to him, why would you choose Batman? Because I'm labeling it. And then he had Joker here and a Joker here, and then princesses. Well, as it turns out, Mom and his sisters are princesses. Hint, Mom is always the princess, just so you know. But the Joker over here, I said, so what's going on over here? And he said, that's Daddy John. And then I said, oh, okay. I said, what's going on? And he said, oh, and Daddy John had all of his girlfriends. There was a bunch of girls over there, too. And then he said, well, he's the Joker, but he's the mean Joker. So, okay, what's going on over here? And he goes, well, that's Daddy Alex. Okay, what's going on? What is Daddy Alex doing? And he said, oh, well, he's laughing. He's making me laugh. So he saw, turns out this dad was in a mental health spiral. This dad was making him laugh. He saw both sides of that Joker. So they pick out characters based off what they know of these characters. And he was Batman. He was Batman watching over everybody, making sure everyone was good.
Cute little kid.
Cute little kid. So, it's like getting into that. But would he have sat down and said that to me? No.
No, he wouldn't know how to.
So when we look at different things, whether it's coloring, the colors they choose to draw, their family, what details they put in those kind of stuff, some of that art therapy. There's other techniques to use, lots of dinosaurs. I have a tackling dummy.
Is there a lot of, do you interact a lot, or is there a lot of, I would imagine, at least I feel like I can tell a lot from a kid just by letting them play by themselves and not saying a word.
And that's the basis of play therapy, is you let them play and then you see where they go with that. Do I interact a lot? It depends on the kid and it depends on the situation.
Yeah, it's all specific to the
some of the older kids, 8, 9, we interact a lot. But I'm also looking when I just as last weekend played Shut the Box with, he went from a really impulsive, really angry kiddo to being able to think about his next move, being able to think, and then when he lost, not being mad, and so we look at that as a huge progress.
What are some of the issues? Because I think we're going to fall in the same category with social media. So
I do see a lot of teenagers. I do see a lot. They're amazing. They're amazing people. They're funny. They're very funny, and they're a lot of fun. And they make a lot of progress. And one of the things I've really been seeing as an issue, so I've really been working on them with it, is that just because someone has an opinion that's not the same as yours doesn't actually mean it's a personal attack on you. So everyone's entitled to their own opinion. They're not entitled to their own facts. And what's happening is people are taking these opinions as facts, and the teenagers are.
Well, especially teenagers, because everyone's got this social status in their teenage years because they don't really make money.
Right.
So their status is your popularity.
So, and I've tried explaining
people
that.
say something, it's like, whoa, that's got to be fact.
Yeah. Well, one of the first things I ask in any intake is, what social media do you have? What games do you play? Because what people don't even realize is that on Roadblocks, your kid can add friends. No 8-year-old has 200 friends on Roadblocks. And so those are not always friends. Those are, older kids, or those are people who are looking to have conversations with children that are adults, or get them onto another platform that's not, like Discord or whatever. So one of the first questions I ask is, what social media do you use and how many friends do you have? And we go through kind of some of that, looking at, that's a snapshot. Is that real? Is that fake? I kind of try and be funny with it sometimes, it's like when your mom's like, you better just smile for this one picture, you're gonna not, and I said, everyone's mom does that, just one picture, no one's going anywhere. And so
it's funny because we're as parents, me and Kelsey are totally turning into that.
Yeah, 100%.
So I catch myself saying, would you just sit still and smile for the picture? And I'm like, oh my God, that's my mom. Every time my mom would ask for a picture, I'd be like, Mom, just take the picture. We got the picture. That's it. We're done. And I kept Kelsey and I both. We just try to take a million pictures of our kids.
I'm extra dramatic about it. I'm like, when you're like, I have to, and I have to sit there, because they're teenagers, and I'm like, everybody does it. And there's, no, that filter doesn't work. That filter doesn't work. And so one, it's a way to connect with them, but two, it's to show the reality of the situation. What you're seeing online is just a small snapshot of what someone's life is. And you're creating what that is based off your own life experience.
Is it even a snapshot, though?
I don't know. I don't Snapchat, and I call it tickety talk. I don't TikTok either. I can't, I don't do any of it.
But what I mean by that is, like, we create this profile because, like, we're in the middle of that right now, Alex and I. We're trying to create this social media presence with this podcast. Mm-hmm. And everyone else, these influencers and these people that are trying to get your attention, that's not how they actually live. They don't 100%. Wake up. Like, the new thing on social media is, this is my morning routine, and they walk it through, and they set up the camera, get back in bed, wake up, stretch, yawn, then they get out, they edit, they pick up the camera, they set it up, walk to the bathroom, get out. It's just absolutely ridiculous. Mm-hmm. How we try to live this completely fake life on social media, but everyone takes it like this is how they live.
Yeah.
This is factual, but it's not even close.
Well, and then they're taking what they say as factual as well. So whatever they're, whether it's an influencer or, whatever, they're taking it as its fact. And they're connecting with whatever that is that they feel is a fact.
Why do kids listen to strangers on social media so strongly?
And I think it's that connection piece. I think it's a connection piece. So when we sent them home for COVID, the only social they had outside of, their friends on, in a classroom was social media. And so I shouldn't laugh, but then you could say or do anything. I mean, if you told someone to, F off, you'd have to face them next day at school.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean? Now there's keyboard warriors.
Oh my God, it's so bad.
And you did that for so long. Like, you didn't have to face the kid the next day at the school. You say whatever you want. So now we've created this culture that there's no repercussions for saying anything. And I get it's freedom of speech, but there's some social aspects of it too.
Well, kids especially have put this huge weight on social media and how important it is. Mm-hmm. So when there's a social media bully or when there's a Snapchat bully, mm-hmm. that extra weight is thrown into that situation mm-hmm. too. Because I know girls, I'm strictly coming from an anecdotal perspective, but I dealt with a lot of our kids dealing with bullying. And 99% of the time, and you can tell me I'm right or wrong, it was a girl being the bully to another girl.
100%.
And then if it was a boy being bullied, it was because, again, I don't mean to put one category as the worst category. This is strictly just what I dealt with and what I help kids with. But if it was a boy being bullied, it was because some girl told some boy to bully the boy. Huh? It was usually like the head of the snake was a girl. Mm-hmm. Is that the same in your experience? The girls are worse?
Yes. And the parents are encouraging this.
What do you mean by that?
I have had to talk girls out of some of the craziest stuff. A great control thing is when we switch hoodies. The amount of nonsense that goes on about like other people's hoodies does blow my mind. And what that means is, well, he won't give me back my hoodie and she won't give me back the hoodie. And I'm just like, would you stop giving away your clothes? And so they retaliate now. So they give back the hoodies full of glitter. So when the boy pulls it out of the bag, all the glitter goes out. And I'm like, what? Uh-huh.
Interesting. Mm-hmm. Yeah, in our experience in the gym, we've had quite a few people talk about bullying, and it was always the girls. Yeah. Always.
Well, and the parents are proud of this. Oh, my daughter, glitter. I went and bought the glitter, or I did this, and I'm just like...
That's so bizarre.
Oh, if it's not glitter, it's dog poop or something. I don't know. It just...
And you think when you leave high school, you're like, oh... I'll leave high school. Nah. That the drama will stay there, and then nope, you find it in college, and then you're like, okay, well, it's less or something, and it'll be less and less, and then you get into adult life, and it's still freaking there, and the adults that you were around, you can pick out exactly who was the douchey bully, mm-hmm. exactly who, because people do not change. Some people do, because I do know, and I've grown quite a bit since high school, but like. Not everyone grows out of the same habits that they had when they were in high school.
It's because it's learned behavior.
Because of what?
It's learned behavior.
Yeah.
So that's how you learned.
Right.
So the parents taught them that, and it's learned behavior. So I think it's normal.
Do you see social media being like a root cause of a lot of the issues that you see with these kids?
Yes.
What percentage would you put on that?
Oh, probably 140%. No, it's a lot. It is, and it causes the anxiety. It causes FOMO, which I had to look that one up at one point.
Fear of missing out.
Fear of missing out. Yeah, and when they're not invited to this sleepover or this, and it creates such issues that they've done something wrong, or and they wouldn't know about it if you didn't put everything on social media. So.
The screen time. So do you do screen time with your clients?
Well, I try. I mean, it's not mine to manage, but I do screen time with my kids.
I know it's not yours to manage, but
I can tell them that they only get 2 hours. But,
right.
A lot of parents don't want to manage it. That's that gentle parenting.
we check screen time randomly. Alex knows this at TNT, and we have seen 8 hours on screen time, up to 8 hours. I think the average was probably like 6. It was extremely rare to see below 5.
Now, add that they're in the classroom on the computers as well at times.
It's all day.
Yep.
It's all day on screen. Social skills wise, completely destroys. Completely destroys. And I've definitely seen that.
Yes.
And we've had kids sign up before. Colton and I will talk about this. We've had kids sign up before, and we're like, maybe he or she's on the spectrum. Like, we don't really know what's going on. And then we put it together in our heads like, oh my God, this is a kid that missed out on all these social skills for 2 years or 3 years of COVID.
Yep.
And we put it together. It's like, whoa, bingo, that makes sense. And that's happened a couple times now with a few kids. And luckily, we get to work with them. We get to help them with that.
Yep.
But social media is...
I've even had to go as far as with some kids to explain my facial expressions. Like that does, if I went like, what does that mean? Have to even go to the comment.
That's for like probably the younger.
Some of the youngers, but even some of those middle school kids so those middle schoolers that went home in 6th grade, they were home until 8th grade.
So if you made like a surprise
yeah,
face,
they're like, why are you mad at me? I'm like, I'm not mad at you. I was just
a little surprised.
Yeah, surprised.
It's a little shocking to hear.
Yeah.
That's interesting. Well, that goes with the masks.
Yes,
too.
100%.
Because you can't see those facial expressions.
Right.
There's a lot. It's like when you send a text, you say, okay. It's like, well, oh my God, this person's mad at me. They just said okay. And I do that a lot. I always prefer to call. I always prefer to call. And then these days you call someone, they're like weirded out that you called.
Yeah.
It's like, why'd you call me? It's like, what do you mean why did I call you? We're about to knock out 87,000 texts in a matter of 3 minutes. This is way more efficient.
Yep.
Even with new clients will email, or potential clients will email, and I'll say, look forward to meeting with you. Here's my number. What's a good time to call? And then instead of giving me a good time to call, they'll just say, well, I just want to know about pricing and this and that. It's like, okay, when's a good time to call? And they totally avoid it. These are adult people. And actually, one thing I wanted to talk about, because we were really big on the kids together and unmasking the kids, but the amount of social media these grown ass adults are doing, 50-year-olds Snapchatting their whole day, insane, filtering everything. Like, won't post a single post without a perfect filter, perfect angle, perfect stance. It's bizarre what we have done.
100%.
It's totally crazy. Or selfies. Selfies are hilarious to me. Like, you're just by yourself and you take a selfie.
See, and I look at selfies as that mental health thing where I'm like, oh, you must have needed a dopamine response.
Right. Who's going to like my stuff?
Right. Let's see.
I didn't get a lot of attention today.
Let's see how many likes I can get.
Let's put some makeup on. Let's put my coolest outfit on, and let's take a selfie in a mirror. And let's see who likes my stuff.
I don't get the selfies in the car, and I don't get the TikToks or the Reels where people are eating. I just don't get it.
I don't get half the stuff on TikTok or Reels.
I don't either. But
yeah, social media is I would say it's the culprit of the increase in anxiety, the increase in depression, and
100%.
Actually, depression is something I wanted to talk to you about. Me and my wife had not an argument, like a little debate. I personally tend to think that depression, it's not that it's not real. Okay. I think you can be depressed, but a depression, because what in your line of work, what is the definition of a depression? It's like a mental sort of disorder.
Right.
I don't believe that.
So there are diagnosable mental disorders, right? But I think we've labeled things like anxiety and depression when it could be fear and sadness. You get to be sad. It doesn't mean you're clinically
It's very normal
depressed.
to be sad.
Right.
That's what the point that I was trying to make.
Right.
I really do believe that depression is like this thing, and you pair it with this victim mentality that we've created, like
because of social media.
Because of social media. Right. The more of a victim you are, the better. The more attention you get.
Right. And so what we've also done is we've created this society or this we want a pill to fix the problem. So I'm a big brain gut nerd. I have been for a really long time, even before being a therapist, where we look at serotonin is made in the gut. And if you can get your gut healthy, you can, really change some of that. First of all, you're feeling better. You might want to go outside. You might want to get some fresh air. You might want to do some grounding. There's a lot of different things you can do that isn't just, I'm going to pop a pill and I'm going to feel better in an hour. Some people need that. There are people that have chemical imbalances in their brain. There are people that are born that way.
Extremely rare.
Yeah. As opposed to what I am seeing now, where it's like, I have anxiety, I need this med. It's like, well, what about the tools to get you through that anxiety? Why are we feeling that? Like, anxiety is fear of the unknown. It's fear of the future. What are you fearful of? And what can we do to come back and control some of that? And not everybody wants to do the work on that. They just want a quick fix. And mental health isn't a quick fix. People come in, well, I didn't feel better. I've come to 3 sessions. This isn't strep throat.
Mm-hmm.
You're looking at a lot of different factors in here. And then people have to want to do the work. Give them a path. I'm not going to do the work for you. I'll give you a path to help it make sense, but I'm not going to do the work for you.
It's that one-click society that we've created. People don't want to do the things. It's like, oh, well, I'm having a really bad day. I'm in a tough mindset. Okay, well, did you work out today? No. Right. Oh, okay.
So well, you didn't get your dopamine. You didn't get your adrenaline. You didn't get
Did you eat breakfast? No. Oh, okay. Did you brush your teeth? No. Oh, okay. Did you go outside? Did you go for a walk? No. Did you do anything you like to do today? No, not yet. Okay, well, why are you confused?
Right.
Did you get enough sleep? No. Well.
And I tell clients that kind of go through that, I would say, well, a butterfly has to dissolve completely into goo, right? A caterpillar has to dissolve completely into goo before they become a butterfly. You get to be goo. You can't stay goo. Mm-hmm. So if you have a goo day where you have to be in your blankets wrapped up, only your head showing, and you're like, I just need to be here today, that's okay. But you can't be that again tomorrow. You have to keep going. And sometimes it's the little ones, brushing your teeth, going for a walk, eating a healthy meal, whatever that is. There's baby steps to getting there, but you can't just expect that you're going to walk into therapy or even a gym and be like, woohoo, now I'm bikini ready, 1 session. You're like, okay, it doesn't work like that. You have to do the work. You give them a path to get to where they want to meet their goal. You don't do the work for them. You can't do the work for them. They have to do it.
Well, so often in the fitness world, we run into people that they start off really strong. It's like, okay, you need a routine. You need to work out every day. You need to eat right. And they fade off between like 3 and 6 weeks because they just were not getting the results that they wanted or that they thought they would get. Yeah. And I always tell people, and that, again, I think that goes back to that one-click society, but I always tell people, like, let's say you're a fatty. Okay, and that's offensive to some people, but whatever. Well, let's say you're fat. How long have you been fat? Well, I've been fat for 5 years. Okay, you're going to work out for 5 years. Mm-hmm. Because that's fair.
But I can just get Ozempic, or I can get, and my friend and my and.
Are you familiar with Ozempic? Like,
not so much, to be honest with you, but I have clients who have used it, or Phentermine, or whatever.
What are some of the side effects?
I haven't really seen any, to be honest. I don't. Really? I think I only have one that has used it, and they lost weight, but they plateaued.
Okay. Yeah, I mean, when you take the shortcut way,
right,
it's short-term results. Mm-hmm. And then you don't have a routine to go with it.
Right.
It's just going to come right back. It's like the people that they'll cut carbs / starve themselves for X amount of time. It's like, okay, well, I got a spring break in 4 months. I'm going to completely cut carbs. I'm going to go keto. That was the big one for a while. I'm going to go keto. And then as soon as they start eating carbs again after spring break, they just balloon back up because there's no real routine. There's no real structure. There's no consistency. It's just, I just did this for a short period of time and then it bounces right back. Right. What would you say exercise and things like that play? Like, what kind of role does exercise and things like that play in?
Well, it helps people feel accomplished, their goals. And then we look at all the chemicals that it releases along with it, that brain needs. So, but not everybody wants to do it.
What'd you say?
Not everybody wants to do it. They don't want to get out there. They don't have time. They don't have.
So if someone comes in and they have, let's say, anxiety, what does that look like on your end? Do you make like sort of an IEP? Or
so no, I don't do it. The schools do IEPs.
Okay.
So I look at where is that anxiety coming from. So what is going on let's just use a child for example. What is going on in this child's brain that's causing this kid to elope, run out of a classroom? What's going on in that environment? What's going on in this different thing? So one of the things was a play therapy. The kid was eloping from the classroom, and it turns out that he was being overstimulated. At the end of the day, one, obviously it's the end of the day. Two, his desk was too close to the bathroom, which was in the classroom, and there was a wall that was a retractable wall to the other class. So he was just so overstimulated. He needed quiet. So then I would help him understand, like, we can't just run out of a classroom, but what are some of the things that we can, one, say, to alert the teacher that maybe we have to wear headphones, or maybe we need to move our desk for that afternoon, or maybe we need 10 minutes in the hallway in order to regroup.
Okay, so do you work with the people that give the IEPs at all?
So I do help with the schools, right? So I'll write a letter saying the kid's been evaluated in the office. This is what we've done. This is some of the things that we look at. District 47 is really great in that they have flexible seating, so spinny chairs, rocking chairs, different. So that helps stimulate the brain as well. Other districts are not. So might have to get a kid a flexible seating where it can rock to get some of that, that brain stimulated, whether it's a kid with ADHD or whatever it is.
Ooh, let's talk about ADHD.
We can talk about ADHD. It's a big one. Thank you, TikTok.
Yeah. So is ADHD, because I always think it's really funny when someone's like, oh, I have ADHD. It gets thrown around so easily, especially with kids. Like, and it was, we can go back to the whole COVID thing, like, but the kids doesn't want to sit still, doesn't want to stare at a screen. Like, oh, you have ADHD. Like, well, maybe the kid just doesn't want to sit still for 8 hours and he needs to get some energy out.
Right. Or maybe we just expect adult behaviors out of children and they should just sit down and be quiet, and the education system's outdated, and that's not the reality of the way children's brains work. And so we're just labeling them in order to get them to conform to outdated rules. Was that out loud?
Completely agree. I think the school system, especially for a young kid, is totally backwards. Like, I think it should be reversed. There should be gym class for 7 periods, doing physical things and physical activities, and then the other, 1 to 2 periods should be sitting down. Or there's many different ways to structure it, but these kids have to just sit and listen for so freaking long, and then they get 1 gym class, they get 1 session to eat. It's completely backwards.
Often, so that's one of the first things I do, even with the kids, even with some of the high school kids too. I'm like, what's your schedule look like? And so they come off a bus, a very noisy bus, and then they are expected to sit in a classroom. Okay, and then they go into the bus and then the hallway. So you see all their friends, and then they're expected to sit in a classroom. Okay, we can do that. And then they have another class, and then they have another class, then they have gym, and then they have lunch, and then after lunch they go outside, and then after that they have art. And then they want them to sit through math. And it's like, you just went through 4 hours of nothing structured, and you just now want them to sit down and learn quietly? Where's the, 10 minutes of letting that brain decompress? I know if I'm doing an activity and I need to go into something else, I need to take a step back and say, wait a minute, I need 10 minutes to regroup and refocus. How come I can do that as an adult? But as a kid, we're supposed to put them in at classes, and now you're supposed to read a book? After and when we even look at it that for little kids, and they have multiple recesses, they come off a bus, then they have recess before school, then they go in, and then they have math, and then they have, social studies, then they have, what do they call them, stations, where they go around the classroom and learn in different things, and then they go to gym, and then they go to lunch, and then they go to recess, and then they come back, and then you're like, well, they won't sit still. This kid has to have ADHD. Or
he's all riled up.
Or he needs a 5-minute break to kind of just go, wow, I just did a lot of stuff and my body was really busy. And so I just need 5 minutes to say, whew, that was a lot.
So what would you recommend in that type of situation?
Give those kids, I recommend movement breaks. So I said, let them have a break.
So 5 minutes, just move around the room. 5 minutes,
walk around the classroom, walk around the hallway of the school, come back to the classroom.
I've been doing a lot of breathe work with Stevie.
Perfect.
My
I do a lot with that. I do a lot of that somatic therapy. I do teach some of the kids that deep breath work, breathing through a straw, or pretending to that 3 really strong breaths and getting that air down into your lungs. really does help that focus.
Oh, we've noticed a huge difference.
Yeah, 3 deep, like if you're breathing through the straw and you, I don't want to do it because it'll go on there.
Yeah.
But that really just stand there and breathe. There's a really great, just basically centers you. And
Do you have any specific breathing tempos that you use?
no, I don't. I do a lot with
like the-
432 hertz music though.
Okay.
I do a lot
Why
with
is
that. It just sends that signal to the brain to calm. So if I have a kiddo who maybe on the spectrum or just comes in really dysregulated, I'll put it on in the office and we'll work on something. It's always, when we look at play therapy, it's child-centered. So it's their decision and they get to choose what they want to do, be it a game, be it a color, being, there's a lot of different options in the office. And so I'll put on the music and they know now because then they're like, ugh, and within about 8 minutes, they'll regulate to being able to calm themselves and things like that. So it just sends that signal to the brain to calm. So even the adult clients that struggle with sleep or struggle with some of the anxiety, let's put it on. And put it on, even if I'm at a wrestling tournament, and there's a lot of crazy people at wrestling tournaments. You've seen the TikToks. It's
somewhat wrestling.
yeah, I mean, I've probably had my TikTokable moments as well, but
You're excited.
Yeah, let's go with that. I'll throw them on in my AirPods, 432 hertz music, and just be like, okay.
So, what's an example of 432 hertz?
It's like
music?
a meditation music,
like the gong stuff, and
somewhere in there. There's different hertz for different things, but 432 hertz is like the grounding frequency. So it's the same frequency you would feel if you went out on the grass in socks or in bare feet. You would feel that. So.
Ooh, yeah. I just recently got my grounding sheet for my bed.
That's on my list as well to get.
Yeah, grounding. We're not sponsored. Grounding, if you want to sponsor us, but it's not something that you necessarily feel. You don't feel like a difference, when you're laying on the sheet but there has been studies done with grounding and how it reduces inflammation and things of that nature. I want one for under my desk. You can plug that in and get grounded there.
I want to get one for my office that goes on the arm. So when my clients are there, they can just go like that. Mm-hmm.
Do you do a lot of like music therapy?
We'll do, again, I recommend a lot with the Hertz music. I'll put it on. I have a sound machine in the office that's all waves and stuff like that. Some of it's to drown out people listening at the door, parents listening to kids, but also just that calming effect.
I think as a trainer, you kind of fall into a therapist category
100%.
A lot of the time, and people will sort of something about working out, right? It just kind of like lets your emotions out, and I will learn things about people that maybe I shouldn't learn, in another setting or whatever. But what I like to tell people is right when you wake up, and this is something that I've been doing recently, if you don't feel that great, put on one of your favorite songs. It's one of the best, or just jam like 5 a.m. or 5:45 a.m. when I'm driving to the gym. I'm just like not feeling it. Just turn on a really awesome song that like that song that you hear and you're just like, okay, this is one of my favorite songs.
My kids have their warm-up lists. I couldn't even tell you what's on them because they go from, Slipknot to Metallica to AC/DC.
Well, that's a whole different story, right? Like trying to get pumped up for wrestling or for football. You're just trying to run through a brick wall.
And what's interesting is there's actually 432 hertz popular songs, rock songs, greatest hits. I will warn you if you get into like the greatest hits part of it, it's a lot of Adele. But there are 432 hertz rock songs that you could, put on a playlist. What'd you say?
Do you know of an example off the top of your head?
Off the top of my head, I don't, but
Okay.
I have it on my Spotify.
I'm sure you could Google it.
Yeah. But there's, so if you're looking to kind of get that pumped up, but also that, grounding effect, I would look into that as well.
Cool. Do you work with diet at all when it comes to therapy?
I mention it? Sure. Not everybody likes to hear about it. So, I do work with eating disorders and those with eating disorders as well. So, working with some of that nutrition and stuff. But again, we look at some people just want that quick fix. So,
Yeah, you're kind of at the whim of just hoping people listen to you?
Or giving them the tools in order to make the best decision for themselves. There is a lot of conversation I have, especially when we look at some of these little kids and some of those ADHD-like behaviors. A lot of conversation about those red dyes and how that affects, obviously the brain and the hyperactivity and
Red dye.
Oh yeah, yeah, you know that.
Red 40.
All of them, yeah. I mean, don't get me wrong. We have Lucky Charms in my cabinet, but we definitely.
Specifically, how does the red dye?
Well, it makes them hyperactivity. It makes it.
And
easier for 'em.
you're referring to red 40, the ingredient, correct? Is it true that that's only in the United States? For people to not know what we're talking about, you can dive as far down the rabbit hole as you'd like, but red 40, yellow 5, all these different dyes that they use to make your food a certain color. So Gatorade's the first one that comes to mind because it's just it's that deep red, that deep red color. And they make that color with this ingredient, red 40, which has been tied to autoimmune disorders.
Yes.
It's been tied to gut issues. That's the big one. And you mentioned the gut. That's really big for me. I'm really big on gut health now.
Same.
So, like personally, I've dived really deep on that, and I'm really big on yogurt.
Yes.
Probiotic, prebiotic. I've got a ton. Before you leave, I'll have to show you my medicine cabinet. It's absolutely ridiculous. The amount of money I have spent on supplements and things like that.
I'll have to send you an article on the biofilm.
Okay.
That it's, I guess the film that you have on your teeth in the morning, well, that lines the gut as well. And it acts as like a cement. So, everything that you eat gets kind of caught in there, if you will. And that's a huge issue when we're looking at, red dyes.
Brush your teeth.
Well, it's just an example, but it's in your
Right.
gut too.
Yeah.
So, that's what's lining your gut, and that's, feeding the yeast. So you can have all the yogurt you want, but if you're eating a yogurt, like a Trix yogurt with M&Ms in it, you're just feeding the yeast with sugars and dyes. So
when it comes to diet, what are some of your main recommendations?
in my
Let's say
house, we try and
for-
do a lot of clean eating. We do a lot of gluten-free in my house. We do not 100% gluten-free. We're not celiac. We don't have anything, but it acts as a glue. So we do
Gluten's a
lot
really interesting one because for years, when I've asked, older clients, have you ever heard of a gluten intolerance? And nobody has up until a few years ago.
Right.
Why is that?
I think it's a great question that I don't know the answer to.
Okay.
I don't know if it's just because it's added more into products. We've baked less. Things are mass produced more. I don't really know the answer to it. I just know that I had kids with some eczema problems and some other stuff going on, and we eliminated gluten. Not eliminated, but reduced it.
Reduced it.
A lot of that stuff just started going away, and it just started to make sense. And then obviously we limit the dairy because of inflammation in their athletes. So.
Oh man, I'm the opposite with dairy. I take so much dairy. It's not even funny. But I think in regards to diet, it can be extremely overwhelming for people because when you do the rabbit hole on especially foods in America,
Yes.
like ketchup. Ketchup's an easy one. Look up the ingredients for ketchup in America.
Yes.
And then look up the ingredients for ketchup in Europe. And it's very different.
Yeah.
Europe is tomatoes, water, and something else.
Well, even peanut butter, like, why do we have to have added sugar to peanut butter? It's like peanut butter, salt, and that,
Yeah.
why? I get it's not convenient because the oil, and then you got to flip it upside down. I get it, but, you're looking at the ingredients. Like, why is there 8 ingredients in your kid's peanut butter? Where do you think those chemicals go? Into your kid's body? No, and if they're not natural chemicals, then how is their kid's body breaking that down? That's what I say about like the Splenda and the Stevias and even these energy drinks. Your pancreas cannot break them down. It's not natural. So where's it going?
Right. No, we are on the same exact page. The more natural you can go, the less ingredients that you can go,
Yes.
the better. And
Yes.
I always tell people the 90-10 rule because it's almost impossible, especially family's really funny, right? So you get together for a family event and you're like, oh, you know what? I'm on a diet. Why are you on a diet? Especially my Italian family. Well, they all are very well aware of how I eat now. But I get this with clients. Actually, one of my good friends, we were just talking about it the other day. You get together for a family event and you're on some sort of diet or you have some sort of goal, and that peer pressure comes in hardcore. Like, what? You're not going to eat the cake I made you? Like, I made this cake for today. You're not going to eat this cake. And it's tough to follow that strictly. And of course you still can. And hopefully your family understands. They don't give you too much crap. But I always tell everyone 90% of the time, eat really good. 10% of the time, eat whatever you want.
Yep.
Like, everyone's got their sweetness, their tooth, or whatever you want to call it. And it's important to enjoy that sometimes. But 90% of the time, eat right, work out, get some sunlight. And I think the answer to, let's say, happiness, like not necessarily anti-anxiety, but happiness is very simple. It's can be hidden behind a lot of things. Like, oh, I got all these problems in my life. But it's very simple. And I think another big one too is get rid of your phone.
I was like, we get off social media. Yeah.
Yeah, as much as you can. And I'm a total hypocrite, I will admit it, because I'm trying
100%.
to grow something on social media, and it's a tool to make money and it's a tool to generate all sorts of things. But at the same time, I think a lot of the things I tell people is get the hell off your phone as much as you can. And I'm horrible. I'm absolutely horrible with my phone. I'm always looking for like material and things for the podcast. So again, 100% a hypocrite.
I'm there with you. I'm
But-
the first one that's like,
Yeah.
let's figure that out.
And I'll just catch myself and be like, why did I just open my phone? And I'll put it back down. It's just a horrible habit now.
I mean, when AT&T went down last week, or 2 weeks ago, I was like, man, this is kind of nice.
Yeah. Yeah. Did you see the videos that came out with that?
No.
There were people screaming
Oh, I'm sure.
at like AT&T, just front desk people, just screaming, well, why don't you fix my phone? And the guys are just like, I don't know it is down. There's nothing we can do. The lines were out the door, just people freaking out.
So what I find is that when a parent will take a kid's electronics, I'm always like, oh, you're in for 4 days. And after about 4 days, they're not, fighting about it anymore. I'm like, that's your withdrawal. It's your withdrawal. I mean, if you think about it, you go through 4 days of withdrawal from just about anything, you've crossed a pretty big line. It's withdrawal.
Kids don't even know what to do with their hands.
No, they don't have to do anything.
They don't know what to do with their hand. They don't know what the heck is going on when their phone is not with them.
Well, and then you have that, Xboxes and things like that.
Every now and then, like when we do the screen time, I'll be like, all right, delete that right now. I'll give you $20. They will not do it. For free $20.
Nope.
Kids will not delete TikTok. Like,
No.
no, I can't delete TikTok. Or what they'll try to do is they'll delete it. Or I'm sorry, they'll delete the app.
Right.
And they'll think I'm stupid.
And then they'll go after you.
And then they'll
Google.
go re-download it.
Yeah.
I'm like, no. Deactivate that thing. And they're like, nope, not doing it.
Nope.
We
Because
get
they
to that
lose all
step.
their videos. Their friends won't know what they're doing.
Yep. But the problem is all these social media companies, they let you reactivate it within like 30 days and you
Right.
get everything back. So every kid I've ever done this with has re-downloaded it.
Sure.
It's crazy.
Because it's their outlet
can't-
to the other world. And again, they don't realize it's not real. They
It's
take
so
everything as
sad.
a fact, and it's just not.
It's so sad.
Yeah.
What do you think the long-term repercussions of this could be?
I guess I think about it. One, obviously, not being able to have conversations. And, I saw some of that as we went through the college recruiting process. My son's going to play at Elmhurst. And just some of these kids not being able to talk to adults and coaches. And, so many of these kids didn't know how to shake a coach's hand. It was mind-blowing. There was even one kid in Elmhurst, the mom raised her hand. They said, any questions? She said, who's going to do my kid's laundry? And who's going to wake him up? And who's going to make sure he eats? Because I do that now.
A lady raised her hand and asked us.
At the football junior day. And I looked at my son. He goes, you have to leave. He's like, you have to leave this room right now. And I said, no, I'm not. He's like, you have to go because I don't know what you're going to say. He's like, so he made me get up and leave because I'm like, you just asked who's going to take care of your grown adult child? Who's going to do his laundry? He is. He's going to get himself up. He is.
I think enabling
is
has been a huge problem.
Yeah. And I think people are confusing enabling and gentle parenting.
Yeah, I could see that. Because we're going to cross into muddy waters.
Here we go.
Okay, you ready?
Okay.
I think this trans stuff going on is a little bit of enabling, and it is coinciding with this victim mentality. And a lot of these trans kids who are saying they are trans were really just maybe the not so popular kids that needed something to be celebrated for. You know, like let's say I'm little Jimmy and I don't have a lot of friends and I'm having a tough time and I feel that anxiety and I feel that pressure and I'm watching social media and everyone's so happy on social media, but I'm not that happy. Maybe I'm trans. And they tend to think, okay, well, if I go trans, well, then I get celebrated and I'm super popular and I'm so powerful and confident and strong and I get praised for going trans. And then these kids go through these surgeries, which are crazy surgeries. Mm-hmm. And now there's this big, not movement, but we're seeing groups like, I think it's a group called, maybe you can look this up, Alex, Transition Justice. And it's about the detransitioners that we're seeing now. And I called this a long time ago that we were going to see these groups pop up. But there's a group, again, let me know if that pops up at all. But it's a group for transition justice. We connect detransitioners and others who are negatively affected. So, do you deal with this a lot?
Yes. I have a very large queer client base. I actually do. And what people don't realize is that if we're going to look at it from a mental health perspective, there's Erickson's stages of development, and which says that there's, from age 0 to 1, there's a stage from 0. And 14 to 24, the stage is called identity versus role confusion. So you have to go through the things from, middle school-esque into 24 that aren't always ideal. You have to make friends and then lose friends and not make a team. I know that's not popular anymore, but not make a team or make a team and sit. Have, boyfriends or girlfriends that break up with you or, go through these, lose a job, not get the job you want, study for a test, not get the grade you want. We have to go through these things in order to figure out our own identity and what we want in life. You can't have a good friend if you don't know what a bad friend's like, right? Because you don't know what kind of friend you don't want to be or have if you haven't experienced the bad. Same thing with jobs, right? You're never going to work this job because it was a bad job. But how would you have known that? So when we don't go through those things, we get confused in what role we play. So when we look at that, we look at people who've been through trauma. So say a parent is passed from cancer and the oldest child is to assume the role of that parent to younger siblings. That person's going to be a caretaker or always want to be the caregiver within that role of the family. Okay. And some of that becomes not just a financial burden, but mental, emotional, everyone runs to the sibling versus the other parent. And so when we look at what's been going on, this is my opinion. It's not a fact. So I just want to say that TikTok and other social media has offered this really great piece where we've had kids starting to question their identity because it's a normal thing to question at that age. And when that rational brain doesn't develop until age 25, we're not really giving a lot of opportunity for those kids to know anything else because we're asking them, what's your identity? Last year, my son came home, he was in 8th grade, and he came home with an entire worksheet about his sexual identity. Now, it was not in the curriculum. 8th grade, health class. It was not in the curriculum. I know this because I went and looked at the curriculum. My friend did. We banded together. And why does the 8th grader have to decide what his sexual identity is? Why was that information that needed to go to the class? If there's a child questioning their sexuality, it was asked in that worksheet. I wish I would have brought it. why was that
You still have
important
it.
at that? Of course I still have it, because I still have another child that's going to go through this class. And why was that important? And I'll tell you this. One of the things I said, no more. He's not in that class. It was health class. I said, there's no reason why. And I went back and forth with the school, and I probably have 20 emails. And I finally said to them, first of all, you've not discussed gender dysphoria or body dysphoria a single time. And if your teacher cannot talk about that, maybe you should ask my son about it, because he's very aware of what that means. Because that's really what we're talking about. And then I said, first of all, he's not in the class. He went to the library. But I said, why are you, be it as a school, but why are you allowing this teacher, and why are you fighting me on teaching my son about this? Not only do I do sex therapy, I'm fully licensed and insured to do that. I've trained in it. I'm licensed in the state of Illinois for it. Why are you, as a school and a health teacher, not trusting me to teach my child?
Or was it the health
Both.
teacher? It was both.
This went all through the district. This went all the way up to the district level. And no one could answer that question. I said, what training has your teacher had in order to have these conversations with students?
None.
I never got a response. Here we are a year later. I'm still waiting for a response to that question. What additional training? None. And she was teaching off opinion and not fact. And when you teach off opinion to that kind of that age group, they think it's a fact. They don't have the brain development to understand the difference.
Well, I think it's kind of the problem with the whole thing, because it is all opinion.
Yes.
It's all opinion. And if a kid says, I'm a fox, we're supposed to be like, well, he's a fox.
Mm-hmm.
let's get him a pet, or I'm sorry, a toy to play with, and
Right.
let's let him run around with his mask on and be a fox. It's like,
And the conversation I have with parents, I say, if this is a phase, what's the harm in letting the phase play out? And if it's not a phase, then we have to get to a point of where there's some acceptance here. But at this point, why are we not teaching the kids who are going through this normal phase of life the entire picture? We're saying, here's a worksheet with the difference between gender and sexuality, and it's the one that you take off Pinterest of the gingerbread. And by the way, click one of these. Homosexual, heterosexual, asexual, all of these things.
And if you are gay, that's an extremely big deal to come out
In front of 8th grade class without any resources.
I need to see this sheet of paper.
I'm going to send it to you today when I get back to my office. I'm going to send it to you. It's mind-blowing to me. And I said, this can't be the way it is. Again, if there's kids that are gay and they want to come out, then why are they forcing them making them feel pressured to come out in an 8th grade classroom?
Well, and what would be the point of, like, let's say you got 10 gay kids and let's say you got 10 straight kids. What is the difference with their education?
I think that's a great question. But I think what was also happening is this teacher had a trauma bond. My son knew her.
This teacher had a what?
A trauma bond with these kids. My son knew her, the addiction that her father had, struggling with addiction. My son knew her preferred birth control method. 8th grade. Why? Why does my child in this classroom know the preferred method of his teacher's birth control? No answer to that either.
No repercussions of any kind?
No. In fact, what happened was it was posted in this group, and we should get to that too. And then she had her friends inundate it. And then now it's private. So we've referenced the group a little bit. We'll talk about it. My friend started it during COVID to unmask the kids of the Crystal Lake school districts. And she invited me to be a part of it. I agreed to be part of it. I added probably 100 friends. And with that, I was an admin. And so now this group has grown to be a group with more advocating for the kids in the district. And it's a place for parents to kind of come and get support. Has it always been that way? Probably not. It was pretty volatile for a while. It actually had been shut down right after we were unmasked. We got censored by Facebook for about 4 months.
What was the reasoning for being censored by Facebook?
Well, we got taken down for misinformation. So.
And now it's not just misinformation; it's misinformation, malinformation,
Right.
disinformation, and they all have different definitions.
Right. And they had gone back, and some people had put like either a meme or shared an article from 6 months before, and they said we had too many violations, and they shut us down. And it had been gone back months, so it was.
So you are reinstated now.
Well, yeah, we got reinstated about 2 months after it was taken down, or 3. I can't remember, but
Well, there's no grounds anymore.
well, right.
Like it's all gone. Like
Right.
it's like so if you go on a year ago, Alex, you know this because I showed you. I had this huge account history of misinformation and sharing and fact checking and all this stuff. It's completely gone.
Mm-hmm.
And I have screenshots of it. Actually, if anyone out there knows of any way that I can take legal action with Instagram or social media, because there is absolutely 100 million % been an effect on viewership, comments, likes, things like that. I'll go back a couple years ago and I'll see like screenshots of how many people viewed my Instagram, and it was like thousands.
Yeah.
Now it's like hundreds. It's like, well, how did it go so far backwards? And I'm sure COVID played a part. And I know people unfollowed me when I was noisy and loud, and haha, you were wrong. Because there was a little part of that. Like,
Sure.
hey, you should feel a little stupid. And it's okay to feel stupid. It is. It's okay. It was dumb. Oh man, let me tell you this story. I was sitting across from someone. Hold on. Let me think about this for a second because I don't want to give away at all who it was. So I'm sitting, and it was just me and him, and he's smoking a cigarette. Okay, so he's like this. He's like leaning in. I'll even give you a visual. Smoking a cigarette. He's like, Steve, I just got to ask you, like, why won't you get the vaccine? Like, it's just as he's puffing this thing in and out.
Right.
He's telling me that he thinks I'm putting my family in danger.
Right.
He thinks I'm putting myself in danger. And, COVID's this big, deadly thing. And my point with sharing this is, how can you not look back at that with everything that's come out? How can you not look back at that and just be like, wow, I feel stupid?
We had gone to Christmas in 2020, and it became a big thing because I'm not vaccinated and neither are my children. And there were some passive aggressive comments made on Facebook, I got my second booster or whatever it was at the time. And even when we were all there, there were just comments made about it. Well, it turns out that some of the family members had gone to a different celebration the night before, and someone from there had COVID. And so 2 days later, everyone starts coming down with COVID. So we created this group family text. And they're like, oh, tested positive. Oh, and I'm sitting there like, yeah. So
much
there
for the
was
booster.
18 people. There was 18 people at Christmas. 14 of them got COVID. The 4 that didn't were me and my kids. And I was like,
That's interesting.
well, right. So we had it the April before. We had all had it.
Well, that's another thing, too. The natural immunity was completely ignored. But I always thought it was really interesting how everyone was so quick. Not necessarily quick, but they would say, like, oh, I did my job. I got vaccinated. Okay. But did you take your vitamin D?
Right.
Did you take your vitamin C?
Right.
Did you eat right? Did you hydrate? Did you sleep good? What other things have you done for your immune system? Because I do all those things.
Right.
I don't just rely on some, let's call it what it is, huge, giant experiment.
Right.
Because there were no long-term studies. And then the data that they used for their decision to shut down the world is now 75 years. It's locked up for 75 years from the court system.
Right.
So for 75 years, I think that's correct. Like, we can't see that data for 75 years, right, Alex?
Yeah.
Yeah, that's correct.
You would know that too. So for 75 years,
Right.
we're not allowed to look at the data that they use to make those decisions.
Right.
Ridiculous. Why would that be?
Right.
Maybe it's because they were wrong. Maybe it's because it's just like the flu. It's just
And when it started,
crazy.
that's what we did in my family. I upped the kids' vitamins, I upped my vitamins. We, again, we took some precautions, but I don't know. I was some of the stuff we live on the lake and one of the private piers in the gates, and our gate was closed. We couldn't go swimming on gate 13. Couldn't go swimming because of COVID. But if you walked from gate 13, 2 houses down was the boat launch.
You can go out on the boat.
You can go out on the boat and you
go in
could
the water.
swim off the boat launch. But you couldn't swim here.
Well, the COVID died mid-water.
I think probably between house 1 and 2. They said it was because the health department couldn't come out. They didn't have the people to check the water to make sure it was safe. I don't know how it was safe here and the water flowed. But somehow those are the things where we look back and we laugh. And even then I was like, this is okay. And listen, you want to vaccinate yourself, vaccinate yourself. You want to wear a mask, wear a mask. I'm not going to judge. I don't care. But I'm not going to do it. And,
Well, that was my big thing, is do whatever you want.
And I have HEPA filters in my office when I have a lot of kids, so they're always coming in coughing and things like that. And I'm respectful of that. If I do have a client that is really, immune compromised and they say, can you please wear a mask? I've just gotten, I'll wear a mask. I have no problem doing that.
I don't think masks don't work 100%. Like they do something, right? So if I sneeze, if I cough, if there's mucus coming out, that's what those are for. They are not for stopping a virus that is microscopically.
Right.
I wouldn't know the verbiage to use.
I'll go to ER. If I have to go to the ER, I'm wearing a mask because I don't know what's going on there. I'm fine with that.
Oh, man, there's so much stuff floating around.
I don't have a problem with that.
Walking in a hospital.
Right. Yeah, perfect. I'll wear a mask. I have no problem with that, right? In fact, I think that's a fabulous idea moving forward. That and Target pickup. Best things come out of COVID. Wear a mask in a hospital and Target pickup.
Yeah.
Perfect.
Did you ever see, going back to the water, I have a couple photos saved on my phone, people wearing masks in water. Yeah. They would wear a mask and rubber gloves while in the water on the beach. They
had the kids in football helmets wearing masks in 100-degree heat and practicing 6 feet away from each other.
How do you practice football 6 feet away from each other?
I don't know, but they did.
How did you? I did not know that.
Yes.
I thought they were just playing football with masks on. They practiced 6 feet from each other.
They did drills and stuff. Yes. Mm-hmm.
But they're safe during the game.
Correct.
They
had to wear a mask if they're on the sideline or so. I can't remember the rules, but I'll tell you this: my kids got COVID. They got COVID wearing masks in sports outside. So,
do you mind if I ask you why you did not get the vaccine for you or your kids?
So for me, I have a lot of medicine allergies. So I was like, until we know more, I'm not going to do this because once.
So you were willing, you just wanted to wait for more.
I wanted more information. Mm-hmm. Yeah. I have a lot of allergies, and so there wasn't a lot of science. We were trusting the science on what was in that vaccine. It was very hush hush, and even my doctor was like, you know what? Once this goes in, we can't get it out. So let's just not risk that. And then being a single parent, I wasn't willing to risk what the long term could be, if I had anaphylactic shock and things like that. Plus, medical facilities are closed. So, if I had an allergic reaction or some type of adverse effect, what would happen? They don't know. There was no science to fixing that problem.
And there are absolutely adverse reactions to this
100%. My oldest was born with neutropenia, which is a blood disorder. His immune system runs low. Thankfully, he's outgrown it. But I did ask the doctor about it, and he's kind of chuckled. He's like, I knew you would ask. And he had done some research, and I think at the time there was 11 kids that had gotten the child vaccine. And they, as he said, did not fare well. So they were still doing some scientific studies on that. There was always a chance that
did not fare well.
There
were reactions to it?
Yes. So his white cells run low. So when you get sick, your white cells go high, his run low. And so what my understanding was at the time was that if not faring well would be that it kicked him out of remission, so his white cells would go really low. That was not something that I was willing to risk for him as a future. And his doctor actually advised against it. Now, of course, no one's going to write a medical exemption. we're just not going to do it. And then the other ones that were too young, there was no way I was doing it. We did not do the spit testing, whatever that was called, shield testing. Do you know about this? In the schools.
You had to
spit in a vial.
If you weren't vaccinated.
The teachers had to do it if they weren't vaccinated. It was optional for
my wife had to do this.
Kids. We didn't do that either, and it shortened your, COVID time or whatever, quarantine time. We didn't do that either. Illinois was like the only state that did it. It was out of the University of Illinois. Pritzker funded the study. You signed over your DNA. I was like, we're out. Again, one of those down that like you just keep clicking until you go, oh my goodness. Okay. This is not,
it's just too weird. The whole thing was so weird.
And it still is. I mean, I don't know if you saw my Facebook post a couple weeks ago, but I'm like at Mariano's and I'm like, what is going on? They're like, oh, well, our app doesn't work because of COVID. I'm like, how does your app not work because of COVID?
This was, when was this?
Like 3 weeks ago. The whole 3 weeks ago. And she's going on and she's like, well, in order to get the sales, you have to sign up and then you have to click and then you have to, and there's 13 people behind me that are not going to wait for me to sign up to get, whatever cereal on sale. I don't understand. I'm like, why just have an app? And it's just like, well, and I said, these 13 people aren't going to wait. Maybe you need to, we can't open up. You know why? We don't have any employees because of COVID. I was like, I'm done. Go shop somewhere else. I can't. When do we stop using it as an excuse for just nonsense?
Well, it was a great excuse for so many things. We used it. Kelsey and I used it a couple times. Like, oh, we might have COVID. We're not coming to this event.
Listen, we've ran that too. Listen, yeah, we're not doing that. Or the kids have a sniffle
But it was a great excuse for anything going on. Like, oh, well, COVID made gas prices go up, and COVID is the reason our business isn't shipping out this, and it's the reason for the delay on groceries at the store, and it was an excuse for everything.
Well, and I just had a conversation with one of the school nurses in this group, and the schools were bringing these incentives in for kids to go to school because there's so many kids that have been calling out. And I said, you guys can't have it both ways. You can't judge parents for sending their kid with a runny nose and a cough, but then, get mad when they don't because you're not meeting your numbers or whatever it is. And then we go to these kids that are K through 3 don't know the old rules of sending your kids to school. No fever for 24 hours. I said, everyone's going to follow what they know. And so, there was this whole discussion about these incentives and that these schools were trying to do to get these kids to come to school. And then when your kid misses 20 days, they're like, oh, well, you're a bad parent or this. And it's like, well, if the kid's sick for 7 days and then
quarantine.
Well, not even so much quarantine, but you don't want me to send him with a cough. That's just a cough.
Mm-hmm.
But then you get mad if I send him with a cough. You have to pick and choose. I go from like, hey, you're not, take the germs back. Like, you don't have a fever. You're not, nothing green's coming out. You take it to school. You got to go back to school.
Mm-hmm.
And I have the luxury to be able to change my schedule to stay home and do all that. But, it's like you guys can't have it both ways anymore. You have to pick and choose. Like, fix it. You can't go on a social media rampage and then be mad when we follow different rules or follow the old rules. But what are the old rules to half the people in school?
Mm-hmm.
Does that make sense?
I mean, none of it still makes sense
to me, but it's that logical reasoning that will get me every time.
Yeah. It was just it was so weird. Like when what was the governor for New York or the mayor for New York, de Blasio?
Yeah.
He made a video eating a sandwich and fries. And it was the most bizarre, it looked like an SNL skit saying if you get vaccinated, you get free burger and fries. And then Dunkin' Donuts was, if you get vaccinated, you get a free donut. And then it's like all of this. If it works and it was really good and the virus was really dangerous, no one would question getting it. They would just get it. They wouldn't need to be incentivized. And all of the propaganda that we saw was so bizarre.
Don't you find it interesting that if you got vaccinated, you didn't get a health membership to a gym?
Well, there was none of that.
Well, right. But
Actually,
you got a burger and you got a donut and you got a free pizza and you got, but no one said, hey, if you get vaccinated when gyms open, here's a 90-day membership since we're,
pushing health.
Right.
Well, there was no actual push for health. The push was just to pay big pharma.
Well, right.
There was no push for health because not a single politician, person of power or authority said, get outside, work out, get your, go to sleep,
Right.
eat your vegetables. Nobody said that at all. It was just get your vaccine and you're safe. Get your vaccine and you won't get COVID. Okay, well, you got COVID. We call it breakthrough cases, right? Oh, well, we got COVID. Okay, well, it turns out you're not going to get hospitalized.
Right.
Oh, well,
now you
turns
are.
out you can get hospitalized with COVID now too. Well, you won't die.
Right.
You're not going to die if you get the vaccine.
Right.
So it's just this huge field goal. They just kept moving it,
Right.
kept moving it, kept moving
To
it, kept
fit
moving it.
their
Instead of saying we may have been a little wrong,
Right.
which I don't think anyone said that at all.
No.
They still haven't said it. And
No,
the CDC
they
just
never
came out and
will.
said treat it like the flu. 4 years.
Yeah. No.
Crazy.
And we're still seeing the aftermath of this nonsense. So.
And I think we're going to see more and more because it's like one of our guests, Dave Facconi, said it was a test and they passed. They figured out what they wanted to figure out during that test.
Yeah.
That's all they got to do is give you a free burger and fries and you'll get a vaccine. You'll put mRNA technology in your body just for a burger and fries for $12.
I will not be doing that.
I will not be joining either.
No flu shots. No, we're good.
No, I don't do the flu shot either. And everyone I do know that does do the flu shot, they always get the flu.
That's why we stopped getting the flu shot. When we got it, we were sicker than any other year. So finally, it was like
I hear that story so much. And there are some people that I hear get the flu shot and then they don't get the flu. But the people that, because I barely get the flu. I don't even remember the last time I got the flu.
Same.
The last time I was throwing up or
chills and stuff.
Chill,
Mine
yeah.
was probably 8 years ago. But they told me that we had to all get it because my son had this, blood disorder, and we had to all get it to protect him.
and you guys got crushed by the flu.
Well, and I think that it played on my fear. Like my son had been in isolation. We had been talking about bone marrow transplants. We had been there. It was a rough 3 years.
Mm-hmm.
So the second they're like, "Hey, you need to do this in order to prevent this happening,"
It's that power of authority when someone tells
I
you.
didn't know different.
Right.
I mean, when you're looking at rushing kids down to Children's Memorial and they're meeting you at the door and, they're putting them in isolation and you're going, oh my God, and they're like, you need to start calling family to find a bone marrow, and then I don't ever want to do that again. So what do I have to do to never go through that again? They absolutely just played on that fear, and now it's like, now I see that not just as a mental health professional, but just as a mom too. And I'm like, I'm not doing that anymore. So
What's funny to me about this whole situation is the playbook is out there. Mm-hmm. The big pharma playbook is well known and it's out there. There's a Netflix show, there's a Hulu show about the OxyContin and Richard Saxler and what the Saxler family did. They essentially paid off, bribed doctors to push their product. They said it's safe and effective, and they used their funded study to show that it's safe and effective. And they made everyone take OxyContin and distribute it. And they paid these people massive loads of money. And then when it came down to it, and we found out what was happening, oh, well, we didn't do anything. We didn't force anything. It wasn't us. It's not our problem.
right.
Wipe their hands clean. Or it's like the drug Vioxx. The drug Vioxx was found out to cause heart issues and killed 60,000 people. And I think, Alex, maybe if you can look this up, Big Pharma made $9 billion on the drug Vioxx, and I think their fine was like $3 billion. So even after knowing they killed people with a bad drug, they made $6 billion.
Sure. What's going to be interesting is we have this conversation in a couple of years about Adderall.
What do you think Adderall's doing?
Well, it's legal meth, isn't it?
I don't know. I have no idea what it is.
It stimulates the brain.
Interesting.
Mm-hmm.
Well, I know
now
Adderall.
we have all these kids that have ADHD that are on
Well, I know
Adderall.
it deeply suppresses your diet.
Yes.
I took Adderall one time because I was freaking out over a test, and it just made it worse.
Mm-hmm.
It just made it worse. And I was like, oh, should have thought this is a bad idea trying it for my first time doing a big exam. It was for one of my business final exams at Mizzou. But I know it deeply suppresses your diet. And the people that I do know that take it, they go skinny mini. They lose a ton of weight.
And you have all kinds of Vyvanse. And there are people who need it. Don't get me wrong.
Were you able to look it up, Al?
I found the settlement was the 4.5 billion. I don't see
how much money they made.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, I know they made way more than 4.5 billion.
Right.
Yeah, I saw in 1 year they did 1.2 billion in sales from that, which was, I think it was like 60% of their profits for that year.
Yeah. So shitty drug, and they made billions.
Of course.
It's crazy. I know we went off on a tangent.
Yeah,
but I want to get back to the LGBTQ plus stuff. Do you find that, we talk about that enabling, has that decision that a lot of the kids have made, do you find that it's enabled at all?
Not with my clients so much. I think that they've, struggled with some of that identity piece. I think there is some of that connection piece. They do connect with some of them in that community. But I don't find that parents necessarily enable it. I think there's a difference between enabling and supporting. I don't have any enablers.
Yeah, you
in
find
that
people
community.
supporting it.
Yeah. I have parents who've been very supportive. I've had kids who've come out in my office. I've had kids who've just struggled with different things, and the parents have always been very supportive. So.
Yeah,
Not like the TikToks that are, out there, but they come in with so much fear that that's going to happen to them. They're going to get thrown out of their house. They're going to, and
well, it's kind of
that's
kind of what the trans community pushes.
Yeah.
Like, oh well, if you're trans, your parents are going to kick you out. It's like, no, it's not. That's not what's going to happen. And
I think there are some.
Sure
that are
possible,
less accepting than others.
Yeah.
And, we won't get into some of that, but there are some that are less accepting than others. I will say that. But I have yet to experience a parent, removing a child from their home in a fit of rage or anything like that. And what I also find is that if we sit down and we have a conversation and help the parent understand, it becomes a better process. It becomes a better, journey for the client. And I think that's a lot of it is there's so much, and I hate to use the term, but misinformation out there. And when we come from a place of understanding and helping them understand, and some of that is just generational. We didn't necessarily have that. I mean, I'm 48, so we didn't necessarily have that. And when I was a kid, and most certainly my parents didn't. And so, helping grandparents understand, or what can I work with the client to help the grandparents understand, but also helping that client understand, say, just because grandpa's not, fully understanding it, or it doesn't, or misgenders you, I mean, there's some that does it on purpose. I will say that, but it doesn't mean that, they're not supporting you. They just may not understand it. And so looking at some of that generational, understanding or lack thereof helps the client process as well.
This pronoun thing has gotten out of hand.
It's a lot.
Z's or Zim.
Yeah, I don't have any of those.
Fox and identify as frog.
Yeah.
It's and people get there's videos everywhere. People getting so offended.
Well, and that's what I say is, the videos out there are for content. They don't realize that they get paid for the more clicks. TikTok pays you for clicks and viewers and stuff like that. So
the more outrageous you make something, the more clicks it gets.
Right. And is some of it valid? Sure. I don't want to take that away from anybody. I don't want to take away the way they feel or the way they were made to feel or anything like that away from anyone. Their feelings are always valid, right? But if you're seeing just those 15 seconds of something and you're getting an emotional response for whatever reason, that's playing on your emotional response. And may not be the entire, thing that happened or, the full story, if you will. So
have you gotten to work with anyone that had gender affirmation surgery?
I have not. I have a couple clients that have looked into it, and it has been a little challenging, actually. I was kind of surprised. Some of it has to do with insurance. some doctors are not taking insurance. They're having you pay out of pocket, which actually becomes a little bit of a challenge when you're, 17, 18 years old.
Well, because I know, we'll just say the conservative side of this conversation. And I do identify somewhere in the middle, but I lean right. But the conservative side of the situation, they make it sound like people and doctors are so quick to, give the surgery out. And I know when you do this and you consider something like this, you need a note from someone like you. Correct?
Actually a psychiatrist.
Oh,
so I don't prescribe meds. I'm not a medical doctor. So didn't go to med school. So you need a psychiatrist. And there are things that have to be done in the state of Illinois. To be honest with you, I've not looked a lot into them because the one client I had that was looking into the surgery was an adult. So it did not need to be something that I needed to be involved in.
Right.
So because once they're an adult, they can do what they want. So I have not had that come into my office, but I'm also not a LGBTQ only therapist.
Right. Yeah,
I
you
see
do a
that.
little bit of
I
everything,
do a little bit of everything. Yeah.
Well, cool. Yeah, I was just curious because it's quite the interesting reads when you look at what's going on and when you start to look at it and the hospitals that are doing these surgeries with, according to the plaintiffs, because there are court cases going on right now that's people are trying to detransition, and they're blaming the hospitals for giving them double mastectomies or whatever surgeries they got. So I was very curious if you had dealt with anyone like that.
Well, and I would even ask those, people that are suing is what was the process that they had to go through. And I don't know the answer to that, but I do know that the one that I had that was looking to get into some of that transitioning really had to go through a lot of different doctors and, I don't want to say hoops, but kind of had to really
Well,
go
I would
through
hope there's a lot of hoops because that's a
Yeah.
huge decision.
Yeah, I agree.
That is a huge decision. And it's a decision that has repercussions and things that you'll have to do the rest of your life.
Right.
You have to rely on drugs. It is hormonal therapy. So, yeah. But anyway, okay, we're right around that 2-hour mark.
Are we really?
Yeah, it flies, right?
Right.
Yeah, something about podcasts. Time just flies. But I always ask everyone, and this time I get to ask from a therapy perspective. But let's, from your perspective and people dealing with anxiety and depression and things like that, what types of advice would you give the ordinary person on the day-to-day basis for living a happy, healthy life? If you had to, give it a little paraphrase, obviously we can go long list with this.
I guess I can tell you what I can follow in my own life. If they don't raise my kids and they don't pay my bills, they don't get an opinion. I think just in life you have to be kind, and you spread kindness is what I spread out. I teach even my kids, do one nice thing for someone a day and do not post about it. Maybe it's... And, even it might be holding the door open for someone who's, 2 steps further than you really want them to be. But it still keeps you honest. It keeps you humble, and it spreads that, kindness out into the world. Pick up a pencil, you just be kind. As for, anxiety and depression, really looking at what's the source of that. Some of it is just the fear. Fear of unknown. What can you control? It tends to always work out. May not always work out the way you want it to be. I always say it's a pivot. My best, Ross Geller pivot. But trusting yourself. I think that's people don't trust themselves. They don't trust themselves.
I think that's really big too. Lack of self-confidence.
There's a lack of self-confidence, but there's just this trusting yourself in that you've been given a foundation. I say this a lot to parents. They give their kids a foundation for the first 18 years, and we have to trust that we've given them a foundation to build their own stories. Some of those stories are going to have cracks, and some of them are going to be beautiful stories of gardens or whatever you want to say, but their cracks will get fixed just as yours did growing up. So we have to trust ourselves. We have to trust ourselves as people. We have to trust ourselves as parents. We have to trust our children that we've given them a foundation to make great decisions. They're not going to make great decisions all the time. You didn't either. We have to love them through it. But, really just living your life to the best of your ability, because you get one. You just get one. And in that, just be nice. The world is a volatile place. It is very volatile. And thanks to social media, I think it's worse than it needs to be, but just be nice. Be kind.
It's also very beautiful, though.
100%. And when you put that stuff out there, you put out kindness, you put out all of it, I think it brings back to who you are, and it makes you feel good about yourself. And it is a beautiful world. It's an amazing place. And
It's hard to see it sometimes.
it is, because there's a lot of darkness. But if you tackle anything like a storm, after a lot of storms, there's a lot of rainbows, but you have to go through a storm first. I always use the analogy of a hurricane. There's bands. So if that band is really rough, some are worse than others, and you get to the eye, kind of calms itself out, and then you got to get through the rest of the storm. But on the end of the storm, there's a rainbow. So, you don't stop chasing rainbows. You don't stop chasing that. You just have to keep going through that storm and trust yourself and the tools that you've been given in life through experiences to be able to handle it.
I think that's huge, too, is pointing out that you don't, if you need help, there's no shame in getting help.
There's no shame.
There's no shame. But you have every tool you would ever need within to figure out what's going on. And if you don't, you happen to go through that process and you need help, there's absolutely no shame in getting help. And from someone like you or a psychiatrist or whatever the case may be.
And I think people worry about people like me judging, or their story being the worst, or they've seen people that are worse, so my story's insignificant. It's still your story. We don't judge. We do see it all. Most of us have been through a lot that we would probably never talk about. We don't get to be here and get compassionate and things like that without living some different, less than ideal situations in life. Reaching out, we give you the tools. Not going to ever shame you if you do something different than what I suggest, or I give you a path, or I help you walk your path. I'm not going to do the work for you. It's your journey. I've got my own journey. I've got my own life journey, and I have my tools, and that gets me to where I want to be in life. So, we'll give you a path, and there's not judgment, and there's a lot of different resources out there that we can also give to people too. So I think everyone should be in therapy. Therapists go to therapy, just so you know. We do too. So,
speaking of that, what's the name of your business again?
So it's Pashota Counseling Services. So we're
located
in Crystal Lake, and then my partner's remote. So we do have remote options as well for people who want to be 100% remote.
Beautiful.
Yeah.
Well, thank you so much for coming on. It's nice to
welcome.
finally meet you
I know,
after
it's
years of
great.
talking about
We'll do it
doing
again.
this. So I really appreciate it. But thanks again for coming on.
Yes, this was awesome. Thanks for having me.
Awesome.
All right. Ha 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 ha!